Special Restored Republic via a GCR report as of Monday 24 May 2021. Judy Note. Notification at any time. The shotgun start was initiated for Tier 4B, US, the Internet group, from Sunday 23 May forward this week. Brazilian Alfredo Mafra reported that at 1:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Sunday 23 May the redemption of financial instruments began worldwide for liquidity, payouts, exchanges and redemptions to begin this week. The U.S. Treasury, DOD, told 25 Wells Fargo presidents to be at work on Monday 24 May at 7 a.m. and to be ready for the RV rollout start of Tier 4B exchanges. The U.S. Treasury gave a directive to Tier 1 banks and redemption centers to schedule Tier 4B appointments beginning on Mon. 24 May from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Our military intel contact said not to be discouraged if Tier 4B was not started by Mon. 24 May because Tier 4B was still planned to start this week within hours of bond liquidity release and other liquidity release categories. The Tier 4B start was dependent upon progress of a. CMKX payouts, b. bond processing, vetting provenance, settlement, closing, and c. global deep state arrest status. According to as of Saturday the 22nd of May, over 250,000 CMKX packages had been delivered with an NDA, check and debit card. They would not get total liquidity until Tier 4B has gone. All Reno subgroup leaders including the Admirals groups, were to have 100% access to their USN accounts for immediate payment at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Monday. The 24th of May Dubai 1 has already been paid out into Tier 1 to 2 Gov and humanitarian organization accounts. There would be 14 days of ZIM redemption and currency exchanges at the special rates, though appointments could be set up to 30 days away. After the 14 days, ZIM redemption and the special rates would end, unless you had made an appointment at a redemption center within that 30-day window, and then the general public would begin exchanging at the new international rates. The event, 10 Days of Darkness, Fall of the Cabal and Plan to Save the World. On Sun. Evening 23 May disclosure and worldwide mass arrests officially began, while 2,149 National Guard troops left Washington, D.C. to give way for a military troop takeover of D.C. On Monday 24 May, multiple whistleblowers inside Facebook were set to come forward with leaked internal docs including Fauci, Gates and Obama's collusion with the Chinese Communist Party, and their ownership of the Chinese Wuhan lab and patents of CV-19 virus and vaccines. Chinese scientists have revealed, this pandemic started in a lab paid by Fauci, BlackRock and Gates, in a treasonous attempt to take down democracies of the world and bring in the New World Order. On Tuesday 25 May the event followed by 10 Days of Darkness. We should see the Internet and media knocked down to bring in Odin online. The old systems must crash before you introduce new systems, so soon we would see Bitcoin, stock market and global financial collapse that included 24 nuclear reactors destroyed in order for GCR to be activated. Q drop 364. Follow the crumbs. You have it all. Dark 10. Enjoy the show. Question asked. Question answered. This drop tells you that ISO 20022 regulation, metal backing, QFS will be forced in the 10 days of darkness after the event on Earth has happened. Q drop 282. When is the 10 days of darkness? Shutdown equals shutdown. Watch the water. Eyes on Ripple and BTC. It all begins with finance. B. Monday 24 May The real news. Mr. Fleming's sources saying they received 3 messages from different people, all stating that the push was on Sun. Night 23 May for arrests and disclosure. Arrests. On Friday 21 May the Alliance Special Operations made arrests in Israel of deep state Freemason Petasatanist leaders who broke the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas Gaza. Last weekend an ongoing mission was launched to take out deep state rats that was provided cover by the Operation Law and Order mission involving thousands of police officers arresting criminals. On Tuesday 25 May some networks would no longer be available due to a satellite change. The storm begins with finance, money. The 24 nuclear reactors that must be removed under the 3GD for GCR to be activated. Why is the event big? The answers are all here. Project Odin QFS, Quantum Systems. Knocking down of Internet and media sats bringing Odin online. Yes, the stock market will crash. It will be precision cyber on certain cabal companies. I have shown you what industries, resources we are moving away from. Executive Order 1221. How many times did POTUS tell you that the stock market will crash, the likes never seen before under Bidon? Castle Rock chess move. The old systems must crash before you introduce new systems. Breaking. Roughly 4 months after the deployment began, the National Guard's mission to secure the U.S. Capitol will come to a close Sunday night, with its mission officially ending Monday morning at midnight. Thousands of National Guard troops that have been stationed in Washington, D.C. since January 6 will finally be able to leave the nation's capital after 137 days. The move comes after the Department of Defense declined to extend the deployment of the remaining 2,149 troops beyond today. The military will stay in D.C. until after the new election. Wait. Thanks Sherry Nunya for sharing this. The National Guard deployment ends today. On Pentecost. Shavuot is 2 days, completing on Monday 5/24. And check out what happens at the end of the occupation. Arrests. Happy Pentecost indeed. 11.8 Disposition of accused and convicted protected persons upon the close of occupation. Protected persons who have been accused of offences or convicted by courts in occupied territory shall be handed over at the close of occupation, with the relevant records, to the authorities of the liberated territory. Fasten your seatbelt, Mark Zuckerberg. Tomorrow. Multiple whistleblowers inside Facebook set to come forward with leaked internal docs. New. James O'Keefe of Project Veritas says multiple whistleblowers inside Facebook set to come forward today with leaked internal documents. Castle Rock. Everything bad to go down on Biden admin, including cryptos. You know which one stay. USA wins. Election flip. The hero, King saves the day, world. Just in. Dr. Charles Lieber, CCP, arrested. $50K a month plus living expenses and $1.5 million in payment. U.S. scientist who worked for the Gates Rockefeller Foundation and Wuhan Laboratory. A year ago Dr. Charles Lieber of Harvard University, an American chemist and pioneer in nanoscience and nanotechnology, was charged with 2 federal counts of making a materially false, fictitious and fraudulent statement about his links to a Wuhan university. On June 9, 2020, the Department of Justice indicted Lieber on false statement charges alleging that, unbeknownst to Harvard University and beginning in 2011, Lieber became a strategic scientist at Wuhan University of Technology, in China. He later became a contractual participant in China's Thousand Talents Plan from at least 2012 through 2015. Big Pharma Labs is owned by? The 2 Wuhan labs are owned by? Really simple. The same people are behind Bitcoin. The same people who are Big Pharma. The same people who have the Wuhan labs. The labs where viruses are man-made just like AIDS and many others. Israel is last. The Bolshevik, Khazarian, Zionist Rothschilds put Israel on the map. Rothschilds artificially inseminated the UK royals. Future proves past. You must understand the past. The reversal of the Act of 1871 has major ramifications for planet Earth. No more Crown, Commonwealth, Constitutions, Balfour Declaration, Big Pharma, Big Tech etc. The world as you know it is leaving. Whiplash 347. Yes, the stock market will crash. It will be precision cyber on certain cabal companies. I have shown you what industries, resources we are moving away from. Executive Order 1221. How many times did POTUS tell you that the stock market will crash? The likes never seen before under bidon. Castle Rock chess move. The old systems must crash before you introduce new systems. Cheat sheet for appointment with supplemental information, Fleming, Rev. May 21, 2021. The information in this document is based on the most recent information available. It is not intended to be the authority on the GCR, RV or appointment process. It is expected that there may be changes once final instructions are received. This information is based on exchanges, redemptions done in the USA. Each country will have its own process and information should be available for all once notifications have been issued. The redemption, exchange process is streamlined and will be easy and straightforward. The appointment will only be about 15 to 20 minutes. You will be in and out quickly. The current understanding, and subject to change, is there will be a safe web link, or 800 hash sent to those who purchased currency, bonds online with a registered dealer. This would include banks, Travelex, Great American Coin or with the aggregating sites, example, Dinar Recaps, Dinar Chronicles et al. Currently there are approximately 2 million email addresses. Emails should be coming from Wells Fargo, HSBC, Chase, Bank of America and possibly Fifth Third. If you do not receive an email, the information will be posted on aggregating sites and or with those who provide RV intel. If you receive an email directly, you may forward it to anyone you gifted currency and or bonds. Follow the instructions provided in the email. You may be asked to verify who you are by answering questions based on publicly available information. This process is similar to when you apply online to open a bank account or a loan. You may be required to electronically sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. Read carefully so you understand what you are agreeing to. The NDA is to protect you. Print a copy for your records and for future reference. At the appointment, you will be signing a paper copy of the NDA. You may be given an 800 hash or a unique 800 hash to schedule an appointment. The number may be to a specific location or you will be giving your zip code, to be directed to the closest location. When you call you may be asked if you have ZIM, currency or both. This is because not all locations will be able to redeem ZIM. Never say how much you have, and they cannot legally ask. Remember that bonds, ZIM, is redeemed, and currency is exchanged. You are free to redeem anywhere inside the United States. You are not required to exchange in your home state. It is recommended that if you live in a small town, that you go far enough from home, so you are not recognized. This is for your safety. There are no restrictions if you want to go to another state. You cannot go to another country to exchange. If you are a U.S. citizen living abroad, check with place of exchange on what options you have available to you. Monday 17 May Whiplash 347 Telegram. China Tuesday, Chongqing, Ford. Start. It is Tuesday. Joe goes to Ford for the electric Ford Lightning. George Post coming soon, to a theater near you. Links to Q2153. Just so happens 1 year Delta for Tuesday says FISA start. Q3603 FISA goes both ways. FISAGATE, Spygate and election fraud, treason. China. Adverse weather forecast through parts of southern China at least through Mon. 17 May. All for May 17 today. Tax deadline. John Deaton and SEC response. China super cyclone event, Doget F listing? Others to follow. Israel says over 9 miles of Gaza terror tunnel, destroyed in airstrikes. The Israeli military has announced the destruction of 9. 3 miles of a so-called terror tunnel network. One storm can change your life and community. Plan ahead. Mon. 17 May Office of John F. Kennedy, Jr. Telegram. We are in a world that is being run by terribly corrupt people. This corruption was the creator of sick politicians. It's amazing how quickly your whole world can change. Massive shapeshifter in the uniforms of delusion, by corrupt politicans. Sounds familiar, like your democracy. A priest with sinful hands in the church. A storm that is coming behind the church. This time believers are united, and for that, I'm grateful to all of you, and greatness to those humans that God wants. Dahlia Lithwick. Let's start at the very beginning of the resistance, which is you getting fired by Donald Trump. Preet Bharara. If we could pause right there for a moment, because you said resistance. You hate that word. Well, I don't call myself a resistor. I don't consider myself to be part of whatever is called resistance. I don't mean anyone any disrespect, but what I care about is the rule of law, and the justice system, and equality before the law, which I think people of all shades of ideology have generally cared about, and I call them like I see them. I don't identify with any particular capital R, resistance. Before we let it go, can you tell me what capital R, resistance, signals to you? I think for some people, and I'm not saying this is what it means, and people should call themselves whatever they want to call themselves, it can signify a sort of automatic, knee-jerk, everything that Trump or anybody associated with Trump, says, does, thinks, feels is automatically wrong. I think that's largely the case, but I also like to think of myself as an independent thinker. I do think that rule of law, and justice, and what happens at the Justice Department, and what lawyers do happens on a different axis from the axis of right-left, Democrat-Republican. It's on an axis that, I think you're saying, is really lashed to truth, law, other values that are separate from purely political values. One of the things I want to get at is this question of what you do when that is completely politicized. In other words, when that truth-seeking, justice-seeking function really just flattens out into a left-right, good-bad. But let's start with you getting fired, because I'm really curious what you would have done had you stayed on. If you hadn't been summarily fired right out the chute, what would have been your posture on this question of how long you hang out and try to do your best and when you just bolt? Donald Trump gets elected. U.S. attorneys traditionally leave, with some period of transition. I was preparing to leave, but then in my case, Donald Trump asked to meet with me, implored me to stay on for another term. I agreed to do that not because I thought of myself as some mitigator, but I thought of myself as someone who had an independent role where I wasn't directly reporting to the President of the United States. Barack Obama told all of us, which has been the tradition before Trump and I think since he's left office, that United States attorneys are appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate, but they operate, as should most officials in the Justice Department, independently from political pressure. When I met with Donald Trump and agreed to stay on, it was under the understanding that we would remain independent. Some people call us the sovereign District of New York, and I wouldn't be meddled with by the President. We're not a policy arm of the government. We're a legal office that does criminal cases and defends against civil cases. I didn't see any conflict between doing my job as I had done it for 7.5 years before and continuing to do so while Donald Trump was the president. I often say, you know how many times Barack Obama called me? 0, and that's how it should be between the president and the United States attorney. What would it have been like if I had stayed? I don't think it would have been tenable. Even if I had not been fired, at some point as I think back, Trump would have continued to do the thing that he was doing, which was trying to cultivate some side relationship at the same time that my office had jurisdiction over and was being asked to investigate various things, including violations of the Emoluments Clause. As we've seen, there have been other things that have gone on with respect to the president. At some point, I think not that much after I was fired, I would have probably had to go, either because I was being meddled with or because perhaps the office would have been asked to take some position that we didn't think was right. I don't know that it would have lasted long anyway. To the extent anyone thinks about Trump anymore, it's gleefully imagining his criminal exposure in the after times, both in New York and elsewhere in the country. I gather he's facing 29 lawsuits, 3 criminal investigations, like a lot. A whole bunch. His tax returns are in the hands of Cyrus Vance Jr., the District Attorney of Manhattan. They're working to flip folks in the Trump Organization. I wonder what piece of that you're watching, or are you just watching all of it? What do you expect to see in terms of accountability and having some sense that there is some closure to any of this? People often, particularly if they're not lawyers, conflate some of these legal challenges that the former president faces with the civil cases. There's not that much that we know about by way of criminal investigations. The one that we know about most directly and most prominently is the one you mentioned, the Manhattan District Attorney's investigation into Trump's finances and business dealings. I don't know because I've not been in the grand jury, I've not interviewed the witnesses. Cy Vance doesn't call me up and tell me stuff, but there is some signaling going on. Cy Vance is not running for re-election. Vance is, as they say, a lame duck. As a lame duck, he's done certain things, including hiring an outside forensic accounting firm, which is not super unusual but it's not that common. He's done something else that is less common, which is hire an outside lawyer, Mark Pomerantz, who's a very distinguished, well-respected lawyer in New York. I'm not going to put too much weight on it, but it seems like the kind of move you make when you believe that there's going to be a charge or there's a good likelihood of a charge, because it's a pretty public thing to do. It also risks alienating people in your own office. It's just a gut feeling that I have that taking these actions indicates to me that that office believes there's a decent likelihood of a charge, and so that's the one I'd be watching. It doesn't sound far-fetched to think, well, when it suited him, Donald Trump inflated the value of his holdings. Otherwise he understated the value of his holdings. Both of which can incriminate him criminally and subject him to exposure. That all sounds like it makes sense. There's also the reporting that Michael Cohen, his former lawyer who was prosecuted by SDNY, has met with prosecutors and investigators with the DA's office like a gazillion times. All of those things, again, they're not dispositive, but they all indicate to me that it's a very serious undertaking. They're taking it very seriously. They're spending a lot of resources on it, and you don't do that if it's a long shot, I don't think. Is there anything that you feel is urgent and exigent that should have been looked at and that should be investigated and that slipped through the cracks somehow? Do you feel as though these handful of criminal investigations and the civil suits he's facing kind of get us there in terms of accountability? There's two categories of things that I think about. One is stuff we don't know. I find it hard to believe we know the full scope and landscape of the things that Donald Trump did behind the scenes that were improper, unethical, and perhaps criminal because there's not been an excavation. I don't know if there are people who are thinking about doing that excavation, and I don't know if there are people who are thinking about coming forward. Trump still strikes fear in the hearts of people who would betray him. That's elected officials and perhaps also people in his cabinet. He hasn't lost that power yet. I had assumed at some point that there might be the possibility of people coming forward and saying, "You don't know the half of it. You know, what he did with respect to DHS, what he did with respect to this, that, or the other thing, and how many other enforcement actions he tried to interfere with." There's that category, the stuff we don't know about, which I've just got to believe there is something there. Then the other stuff that's big ticket that happened out in the open for which there was an attempt to hold him accountable. The big lie of the election, his involvement in the incitement of the riot and the insurrection on Jan. 6. The stuff he did with the interference in the election in Georgia. I don't know if he'll get any accountability there. I don't know that the administration has the interest and stomach to do something there, especially when there's an interest in moving on. It's a little bit hard because on all these issues where people want to hold Trump accountable, there are arguments that he has been careful enough with his language, that it's not clear, 100% galloping over the criminal line, although there's a good argument to be made that he did. With respect to the Secretary of State in Georgia, he did not say directly and openly in recorded fashion, "I want you to make up votes to get me the 11,000 some that I want." Similarly with the insurrection, he did populate his words with the phrase, "Do it peacefully," because some staffer must have said, "You got to say that one time, Mr. President." He didn't say, "Hit Capitol police officers over the head with a fire extinguisher, beat them up, break windows, go into Nancy Pelosi's office. I want you to chant, hang Mike Pence. But he did enough that reasonable people like me and you would say he should be held accountable for those things. In everything he does, he figures out a way to signal what he wants without outright saying it. I tend to agree with those people who liken him to a mob boss who doesn't have to say the words. Historically, it's been very hard to prosecute the mob boss for these precise reasons. Let's get to the great, luminous, searing, scorching crazy of Rudy Giuliani. Before we dig in, can you just remind us what Giuliani is probably on the hook for? This influence campaign to get Ukraine to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden? What's the backstory? He was part and parcel of this campaign to do a number of things. Try to encourage officials in Ukraine, not necessarily to investigate Hunter Biden and his role in a company, Burisma, with respect to corruption, but just to announce an investigation. Because as I think reasonable people understand, what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani, his henchmen, were looking for was a political victory. They didn't really care about corruption. Also, what we're seeing now, sort of a redux of the Ukraine affair, is the involvement of Giuliani trying to get the ambassador Marie Yovanovitch fired, and the New York Times reporting suggests that that's one of the central things that the Southern District investigators are looking at, and whether he was violating FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, by lobbying or doing things at the behest of a foreign government without registering as an agent. All that stuff is swirling around. The fall of Rudy has been something to watch. It's been a sight to behold, and it's been, among other things, sad. I think you know better than anyone that Rudy was not a clown show his entire career. He has this long and storied career as a serious attorney. That's what's sad, is that he's turned into Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood overnight. It's funny, he's adopted the playbook that every prosecutor is familiar with. That is your targets, your subjects, the people you charge. They never send you flowers or chocolates, but they will attack you. They will say you're political. They will call you every name in the book. I mean, Rudy has taken to saying that the people of the Southern District are jealous of him because they haven't made the kinds of groundbreaking cases that he made. Nobody remembers your cases, Rudy. The people who are in that office today, almost all of them, who are probably working on these matters, were not born at the time that Rudy got his 2-year sentence against Michael Milken. He's resorted to this kind of crazy rhetoric because that's all he has. It is the case that he had a certain kind of mean streak and hyper-aggressive approach to crime. Broken windows, the squeegee guys, when he was mayor and when he was U.S. attorney, and that he has an explosive personality. There's lots of negative things about him, and a lot of people didn't like him for those reasons. But the straight-out crazy, nonsensical nature of some of the things he says and does now, that is new. What is going to get us to the truth part of how we have shared norms and values? It will not surprise you to know I don't have an answer to that question. No, I know. I don't either. Look, let's take January 6th. We can't get agreement because we need political agreement on forming a bipartisan, equally allocated commission to get to the truth of what happened. That's how little there is agreement on what the truth is and whether people want accountability. This is the saddest thing of everything. It's not the lack of accountability for people who may have done bad things. That's not good. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but for large segments of the population, the death of truth, I don't know what you do about that. I mean, people would say that unless you had a videotape of Donald Trump committing a crime, like stabbing a person on Fifth Avenue or shooting a person on Fifth Avenue, famously, it's not that they would necessarily forgive him. They wouldn't believe it. We are on the cusp of deepfakes becoming a big problem in this country, and I think it's an underestimated problem. That's just going to be another way for people to never be confronted with contrary evidence, because everything can be manufactured. Everything can be made up. We've always known there's a subset of the population who thinks that the moon landing was faked, that 9/11 was faked, that the Earth is flat, etc. It's not tiny, it's not 1%. There's some percentage of people who think that, and they have been empowered, and that's maybe the greatest tragedy of the Trump administration.